Now, the next point is you should understand something called as SQL. So what is SQL in general? So SQL stands for, guys, structured query language. Structured query language. So as a name says, structured. So it will be mainly working for a structured data itself. So mainly relational database itself. That is first thing. And what is SQL? It means it's a language. It's a query language. See, we know what's a programming language, right? So we in this course we have seen so many syntaxes in order to do many operations using our Python programming language. So what is a programming language? In order to communicate between a human and a machine, we use a language called as a programming language. In the same way, if you want to work with databases, in order to talk with databases, because when I say I want to do some operation with the databases, means I want to create, I want to store some data in databases. You need to talk with databases. We need to uh, uh, make database understands our information. So that thing can be done using your query language. So it's also a language. A language, language itself is nothing but a medium. But query language is nothing but SQL, structured query language is nothing but it's a language in order to make our client means a Python or whatever client you are using right now, to talk with databases, to communicate with databases and do all the operations. So whatever operations I told you already, that is crude operations, that is create or read or update or delete, that particular operations, okay, that particular operations can be done by using this particular language called as SQL. Means in order to communicate with the database management system, in order to communicate with the database management system, DBMS, I need some language because it's also a software, right? And many companies have their own database management systems, and everyone has their own way of programming. So there should be a standard language such that everyone can use to communicate with the database management system, and that particular standard language is called as SQL. So using SQL, you can almost use all the other database management system, not only MySQL. Even though we are using MySQL, the same kind of SQL query languages can be used for other database management systems also to communicate. So once you are good with SQL, if you are good with SQL, you can also work with other database management system also with a very small changes in the queries. That's it. So in order to do all the crude operations, all the database operations, you need a language to communicate with DBMS and do our things done. And that language is called as a structured query language. It's called as query language. Means you are querying something, you're asking something to do, and it is doing that particular operation. So structured query language. Okay. Now you have understood about what exactly is SQL. Now let's understand regarding some more thing regarding the databases. Okay. So let's assume that you have your system, you have your system, and in that you have, let's assume, a database management system or database. Okay. In your system, you have a database management system. Okay. Let's assume this is your DBMS. Okay. Your database management system. So basically, guys, by using your database management system, you can actually create multiple databases. So why do we create multiple databases? Basically, generally, guys, for example, if you're working with multiple projects, so for each project, you can create a separate database. Or in one project, you might have multiple modules. So for each module, you can create a separate database. So it's completely your wish. How do you want to create it? So let's assume you are having uh, multiple databases like this. Maybe database one, I'll call it as, or maybe if you're working with a project related to bank, so I'll call it as a bank database. And maybe this is one more database where you are having another project for retail project, maybe a retail project. Okay. So you have multiple projects like this. Okay. Now in this particular database, basically, how do you store your data? So I'm talking about SQL, MySQL database management, and especially I'm talking about structured queries, structured programming, structured databases. Okay, means relational databases. So in a structured databases, when you have a database something like this, you will be storing your data in the form of something called as tables. As I told you already, your databases, your data will be form of tables. Means tables in the sense what? Rows and columns. So in each database, you can create a multiple tables. So you can say it as table 1. Maybe this particular table will be storing maybe the customer's personal information, customers information. So I'm working with bank database, I'm storing customers information in this. Maybe one more table for transactions information, table 2 maybe for transactions information, right? So like that you can create n number of tables. So in a single database, I can create n number of tables, and each table will be having the form of a rows and columns, right? Each table will be having the data in the form of a rows and columns. The same goes for retail database. Maybe if you want to store the mall information, retail means what? A shopping mall or something like that. Mall's product information, products information in one table. Next, in one more table, you want to store customer purchase information. So table 1, we call it as table 1. So like this, your entire structure of a database looks. So you'll be having a database. In that database, you can call you can call whatever database name you want to give. And in that particular databases, you have multiple tables. Here also you'll be having multiple tables where you can store your data, multiple kinds of data, because in a single project, you'll be having multiple tables, right? You can create multiple tables for a single project in the same way. So in this way, you can actually have a proper database structure. Okay, cool. Now, as I told you already that your data will be in the form of tables. Now, how do you store? As we know that we will be using something called as SQL queries to store your data in the tables, or create a database or create tables. So let's see some SQL commands. Okay, the basic SQL commands or SQL language statements. Okay, so if you just uh, divide your SQL commands in terms of the operation it does, we have 4 types. One is DML, DDL, DCL, and TCL. Let's start with something called as DDL. DDL stands for data definition language. Definition language, as the name says, define. Okay, definition. So if you are working with, if you are trying to do some define operation in the sense creating operation, like, or modifying operation of the database, means if you are trying to change the schema of the database. See, right now what you are trying to do, create will be helping us to create a database. Okay, create will be helping us to creating a database. Alter will be helping us to alter the database. Drop will be helping us to drop the database, right? Or drop things. So here you are trying to change the schema. You are trying to change the definitions. Means you define the schema and you want to change it. You want to alter it. That particular queries. So create, alter, drop comes under definition language, because it will be helping us to change, either create a definition or modify a definition. So by using alter command, so this is the command. Okay, this is the keyword which we'll be using. Of course, it's not the only one. We will be appending with multiple things here, but this is the keyword. This is a command. This is a keyword used to actually do this operations. So create will be helping us to create things, alter things, and drop things. Okay, that is what definition language is. Definition. You are trying to modify the definition, or you are trying to create the definition. You are trying to create the create things. Okay. When I say next, data manipulation language. When I say manipulation, see, now I told you already that you will be having your data in the form of tables, right? Tables. Now, whenever you are working with tables, that is either select will be helping us to read the data from the table. So if you want to read the data from the table, or insert the data in the table, table you want to insert the data in the table. In the table, I want to insert the data. See, and update the data. If I want to update whatever insert, for example, I'm having a row here. I want to update that particular row or delete that particular row. You can see here, these 4 operations will be helping us to work with tables. Of course, here this operation is not help us to create table, only for manipulating your table. That is the reason we call it as data manipulation. Data manipulation. You are trying to manipulate your data. Either read your data or insert the data into the tables, or delete or update your data and delete the data. So what you are trying to do, you are trying to manipulate the data in the tables. That is called as DML, data manipulation language. So all the manipulation operations you are doing in this particular step. In this particular step, you are trying to do all these manipulation operations. And then we have data control language. So basically, this is nothing but talking about permissions. Okay, control in the sense permissions. Okay, when I say permissions, what is my permissions? See, for example, now you're working in an organization, and a few people will be having only read access. Few people will be having only read and will be having both read and write access. Few people will be having only some alt access. So everyone will not having all the entire access, right? So when you want to maintain that kind of access control, you can use this data control language, as the name says, data control, access control. So where you can grant permission or revoke permissions. So these kind of operations can be done using the DCL control, data control language. Okay. Then we also have something called as TCL. No need to worry about that. We'll need to go with this, or else we'll get confused. So I'm not going into this particular commands right now. For now, this is also one of the other kind of language statements. But mainly we'll be focusing on, mainly in our course, we'll be mainly focusing on these two things, guys. That is DML and DDL. So this is like these particular operations will be done basically by administrator. Okay, so we need to worry about that right now. If you want, you can just explore later on. But mainly in our course, we'll be working mainly with these two kinds of uh, SQL language statements. So I hope you are now clear with what is database management system, what is databases, what is SQL, and what is the structure of databases, and what are the different types of SQL management, SQL language systems, like SQL language statements, various keywords. Okay. Now what we will do is we will in the next video we'll be trying to set up the MySQL system, MySQL database management system in our um, systems, and we'll install everything, we'll set up everything, and then we will be starting connecting your Python to the MySQL and doing all the queries. Okay. Thank you, guys.